butterflies is what you all wanted me to talk about, and I said, of course, I'd love to. For me, this is absolutely a passion. And every year, it's so much work. I think to myself, I might not do it next year. And every year, I can't wait until it happens. I thought it would be really fun to start here, and I think this will work for us. And this is a video, and that's always a good way to start. This is a large skipper butterfly, and of course it's on Buddleia, because y'all are experts. And of course it's the butterfly bush, which gets such a bad rap these days. I have one, I don't mind it, and this is a sterile one, so it's not going to do what people worry about. And this particular butterfly, you can actually see that proboscis, and I hope I say that correctly. People tell me sometimes I don't. It's short, it's a long word for just a long tongue. And that allows it to get the nectar out of the flowers that it's on there, on that butterfly bush. It's like a straw. And that's how it gets it out of there. And if you notice, it just rubbed off some things. It's rubbing off the pollen because it has no need for that pollen. But that's what it's doing there. And it's not, you know, it's a kind of a messy garden scene there, of course. But it's a great way to have captured that. It's hard to get these pictures. So we also call that nectaring. That particular butterfly is going there to get nectar, and that's it. So here's a quick introduction. That other one is just about things that I've done. I started off over 20 years ago with native plants, and it was something I was forced to do. You talked about soil. I had horrible soil. I kept looking at those wonderful magazines that were for gardeners, and I could never make all that happen. I don't know how they do that, but I personally couldn't do it. And so what happened was I went to native plants, partially because there were woods around where we lived, and I went in there and said, somebody's doing it better than I can do it. So that led me to here in retirement, and when we moved here, I went to the Master Gardener sale to help them out with this sale. I bought 3 tiny little milkweed plants, and that got me into this journey I've been on for over a decade now. So with those the milkweed, it led me to monarchs and the butterfly and the pollinator gardening. And I can tell you, and you know, maybe it's not true of everybody, but for me, this kind of gardening has been the most challenging gardening for a lot of reasons. And I say I threw away the vegetable gardening to grow food for human beings, and now I grow them for pollinators. So it's more important, though, about the pollinators, and to introduce you to them, moths go back 250 million years. That's a long time, obviously, and that actually is most recent information. I think they're going to find they were around even longer. So, as we know, moths fly at night, and from the moths, butterflies became day flyers. Believe it or not, the butterflies first started here in North America and then moved to South America. Wasps have been around 130 million years. 125 million years ago, what happened was a few of those little wasps decided they were going to switch their feeding to being vegans. And then they decided that for their young, they would feed it pollen. This is the story, and it's so amazing when you think about it. Plant pollen became what they were feeding their young. And that triggered those plants to do 2 things. To give us the flowers that are absolutely breathtakingly colorful and gorgeous, and also to evolve nectar. And that's an awful lot to take in my opinion. So the next thing has to do with what I'm going to talk about, We're going to have some questions and answers. I don't want to put anybody on the spot, so I'll just give you the questions, and then I'll tell you the answers. And part of it is just so we get the definitions down. I'm going to tell you 2 stories about the relationships between plants and pollinators to show you how unique that can become. I'm going to talk about tips for attracting them. Most of those are coming from smarter people than me. And then we're going to talk about some plant choices. So, what is pollination and what is a pollinator? And you know, the big buzzwords these days are pollinators and pollen talks are plentiful. Everybody wants to hear about native plants and all of this. And so I always think, well, I better know what I'm talking about before I start. And why is it important? Because we know, because we're reading a lot of information, they're declining in record numbers, these pollinators. And you know, it's a habitat loss. It is using chemicals and pesticides, often ones we don't need even to be using. It's about diseases that some of these pollinators get, and it's also about climate change. And there could probably be a lot of other things. You know, my husband's good about always saying we as humans are the biggest invasive species, so a lot of it is all back on us. And then for the pollination, that's how the plants reproduce. Everything's about sex and reproduction. And this has to happen for those plants to be fertilized and to produce fruits, our seeds, and our baby plants. So a pollinator is anything that helps move that pollen from the flower stamen to the flower stigma. And this is all basic, but you know, I was in Master Gardeners in Virginia, and a woman in the back said, you know, I've listened to this 40 years, and now it's finally sinking in. And I think no matter what, we should always go back to those basics. A pollinator is anything that moves that pollen, and it's always going to be that. So the next thing, and we've all seen this before, the cross-section of the flower. The stamen, of course, is the male part of the flower, and the stigma is the female part. The stigma receives that pollen during fertilization. The stamen has the anthers that are at the top, and that's generally, the anther is where the pollen is produced. It actually is where the pollen is produced. And once the pollen from the stamen moves to the stigma, which is in the center there, the pollen grains germinate. They're usually in threads. It grows, the plant grows, or flower grows a pollen tube into the ovaries in the center there. And that is where the seed is produced and the endosperm also. Now, some plants are fertilized when the pollen is carried by wind, some by water. Your eelgrass does that. And then the third is insects, birds, and we also do it. If you have, for the most part, tomatoes during the winter months, it's done in greenhouses. And in the old days, it's changed a little, but all of that was done by humans doing the pollination. It's expensive, which is why they've changed. And they've changed to doing it with bumblebees, believe it or not. So, who are the pollinators? Well, I'm going to introduce you to the pollinator team. We have bees, we have wasps, we have butterflies, we have moths. We have beetles. Hoverflies actually do an awful lot of work for us. Hummingbirds, and of course, as I said, us. So, 75% of all of our flowering plants are pollinated by that group. Why is it important? Well, every one bite out of the 3 that you take is because of them, and we should thank them for it. Why do they do it? Well, pollen is rich in proteins, amino acids, fats, and carbs. And it's also the Gerber baby food for bees. Some pollinators, like bees, will gather that pollen intentionally because they're going to use it when they're building the colony. Butterflies and moths do it unintentionally because they're basically just after that nectar. Why? Because nectar is a sugary, high-energy natural food source, and that's what they need in order to live. It's produced by the glands on any part of the plant, but mostly in that flower. But it also can be on the leaves, and it can be on the stems. It can even be on the spent flowers. You can see sometimes pollinators going there. And they're actually also after some of the minerals that are there as well. It's like a grocery store or a restaurant. In the case of the unintentional pollinators like those butterflies, the pollen ends up stuck on their bodies. We would see that when we saw that first video. When they're nectaring, they will pick it up, and at the next flower they go to, some of that's going to transfer. And it's just such an amazing thing that occurs. So in conclusion, this is what you have. The plant feeds food to the pollinator in exchange for moving for more plants and another generation and survival of that plant species. So let's look at some of our team, as I like to call them. And this is the first string. These are the bees. On the right-hand side at the top, you see the honeybees that we're always so used to seeing, and some of you might be beekeepers. These guys are wonderful. They're at the top of the list. They provide us with well over $20 billion in our U.S. crops every year. So we have to give them a hand and an applause for doing that. I will tell you, though, they're not native. They came from Europe, so they were not native to this country. We have 4,000 species of native bees. And when you get into it, it is so difficult, in my opinion, to figure out what you're looking at if you want to call it something like we call our plant something. Because some of them are so tiny, they're smaller than freckles. In Massachusetts alone, we have 400 species of native bees. And they come and they go. I will be showing you a picture of one that is actually in extinction almost, and we're trying to bring it back. And I took a picture of it in my yard, so it's not like you can't have these opportunities too. These bumblebees will visit 1,000 flowers or more a day, just to give you an idea of the work they accomplish. On this side of the picture, you're seeing one of them, and you see those pollens, the pollen sac on one side. There would be one on the other side as well. And it's always a pleasure to see this because you realize that they're doing their work. This happens to be a female because it has a pollen sac and also a worker bee. So you can amaze your friends and neighbors, if you didn't already know that, with that wonderful bit of information. They also are fat, they're hairy, and they absolutely defy the rules of aerodynamics. They also fly at lower temperatures. And that's really something to make sure you recall and remember. It's below 50. They're still just about able to come out. Most of our native bees are solitary, and they go underground to build nests. You might wonder what that picture underneath the honeybees are. And it's not, I didn't put that in to show you a bumblebee booty, as the younger people call it. It's just that they have 4 wings, which is something that very few people know. They always think they have 2. So our second half of the team pollinator we're going to look at are, of course, our butterflies. I already showed you a large skipper in that video. And then here we have, these are very, very common here on the Cape, and we get lots of butterflies. On the left-hand side is my true love, the monarch. In this case, you can also, if you don't know how to identify a male versus a female, this one happens to be a male. If you look at the wings, those lines on the on the orange, those are indicating that it's a male because they're thin. Those little lines, the black lines, are thin. They're thinner than the female. But the real way to identify them is on these lower or hind wings, as we call them. On either side of the thorax is a little oval, that black oval. Those 2 ovals will indicate to you that that is a male monarch. So now you're on your road, if you didn't know that, to becoming an expert, right? People always ask me, how can you tell the difference? I actually can tell the difference on a chrysalis, whether or not it will be a female or a male. And isn't that amazing that that is something one can determine? So on the right, we have the eastern swallowtail, and this one also comes in black. And if you're doing some of your herbs in your garden, you might even end up with this. And then below that is the Baltimore checker spot. The Baltimore checker spot, does anybody grow chelone or turtle head here? Yes. There are always people that grow that. So if you have them, this is the guy that you're going to see. That female might well put some eggs on your plants. And so look out for them. Butterflies, by the way, and you can see it in 2 of the 3 pictures, they always need a landing pad because of the way they have that proboscis, and they need that in order to do the nectaring and getting that pollen. So here's my first story, and of course it's related to monarchs because I can't help myself. So I have 2 pollinator stories for you, well, maybe 2.5, but they're to show how unique that relationship is between the plant and the pollinator. And you have to keep in mind that these relationships don't just happen in a year. These are over many, many years that these relationships develop. So the first pollinator story with this milkweed, of course, I'm going to tell you about the monarchs. Milkweed is the only host plant for monarchs. So they're very fussy. No other plant is going to do for that female monarch. And it is, if you look at it, though, from the plant standpoint, the plant wants to survive. That milkweed wants to survive, just like every other plant that we have. So if you look at the milkweed, it has a chemical defense to stop insects from killing it. A lot of plants have this. In milkweed, the plant's leaves, the stem, and also the pods, when they're developing, have something that's sticky, it's white, it's sappy looking, it's a latex kind of a thing. And that liquid is a poison. It has a poison in it. And the chemists, of course, know, because they've done the experiments, they refer to it as a cardiac glycoside. And monarchs, and here's the caterpillar, are one of the few insects that can eat the leaves of this plant. They eat only the leaves, but it comes with a price, of course, just like everything else in life. Monarchs are now specialized only to native milkweeds. Being the only host plant is the only thing, as I said, that female is going to lay eggs on. She's going to lay them on the underside of those leaves smartly, isn't that smart? To protect it. And once the caterpillar emerges, the leaves of that milkweed are the only thing that it will eat in order to grow to an adult. So, eliminate milkweed, you're going to eliminate monarchs. They're not going to be able to change that relationship to other plants that quickly. That means if we don't have enough milkweed even, we're going to not have those monarchs. I can assure you it takes a lot of milkweed to grow those caterpillars so they get to be the last generation of the eastern migration that's going to go all the way into South America. Last year I raised 296 from eggs in my yard, and that's taken me time to get more and more, meaning more and more milkweed. I've gone as high as 500, but I have substituted it from, I have gotten milkweed from somewhere else. So here's my pitch for milkweeds. We have milkweeds that are native to Cape Cod. I'm pushing them because that eastern monarch migration with 4 generations going all the way up and around every single year is in danger of disappearing. I think we will always have monarchs in the world. It's just we're going to lose that magnificent migration. Last winter they did, and I don't mean the one we are just kind of at the end of, but last one, they do a survey in Mexico where they overwinter, and they were down to the second lowest number they had ever had in all the times they'd done the survey. And so the good news is this year they have gone up 99%, but it's 99% of the lowest, the second lowest ever. We're still not at the average level that we would even halfway want to have. And it would be such a shame to lose that. The good news, of course, is wonderful, and we also have the Department of Interior looking once again at seeing if we don't want to put them on the endangered list. And that would mean more effort going towards them. So monarchs aside, though, milkweed will get you more activity than most of our other native plant selections. And there's a whole ecosystem that you'll start to notice. People who end up planting them will email me later saying, what is this red bug? It's the beetle, the milkweed beetle. It's quite colorful, but it's okay. It deserves a place. We also have a milkweed tussock moth, and it's as cute as it can be when it's a caterpillar, but I got news for you, it'll decimate milkweed. I have over the years seen just about everything on it, and of course your bees are going to be all over it when it's in flower. So let's take a look at a few. How many of you have Asclepias or milkweeds? Great. Great. Well, I can tell you, I started with 3 tiny ones, and I think 2 of them died, and I ended up with 1. And over the years, there were I just got more and more. But this is the one that a lot of people like to start with, and this is the tuberosa. It's shorter. It's well-behaved, is the way I like to say. I try to call it the Indian paintbrush, because if you call it the butterfly weed, we think it's a weed, and I don't mind anything being a weed. A lot of these have weed on them. So this one grows in sandy soil, it's okay. I put it behind the shrubs. I don't care where I put these things. It doesn't matter. They're going to keep coming back. They're going to be doing their thing, and you're really helping. Look, two monarchs on the one side and this bumblebee is on the other. That's a common eastern. And then you go to your next one, and I adore this one. This is the incarnata, and this one is, you can call it rose milkweed, you can call it swamp milkweed. A lot of people call it swamp. I don't like the swamp part because it makes it seem like you need a lot of water in order to grow it, and you really don't. I have it here, it's in the front, next to my front door. I'm happy about that. It got like this pretty quickly. It's nice when it isn't even in bloom, for goodness sakes, but of course people like to see it that way. It's the size of a shrub. I don't think about cutting it back. And this guy here, I was so thrilled. This is a brown belted bumblebee. So I'm getting different kinds of bees coming in even. Then this is the third one, and I always think this is the hardest sell of all. This is the Syriaca and the common milkweed, and this is the one that has rhizomes, so it will spread. I have this in front of a patio, so the bricks are going to stop it from going anywhere else. In that garden, if I took a picture of it over time, I have a lot of things that are flowering before and nothing afterwards except the monardas come through it. You could see a few of them in there. And it's just lovely. This particular one has the most incredible scent. I say it's like honey, and somebody says honey doesn't smell. It is the sweetest smell and aroma. And it will just be absolutely teeming with bees. There are so many bees all over this that they're buzzing. If you walk by, you kind of have to move carefully because they're doing their thing and they're not going to stop for anybody. But I think it's great. Why is it so important? 90% of that last generation, we call it the Methuselah generation, that's going to take that very, very long migration all the way south over the Gulf and into Panama and even further down, Mexico, they're going to be consuming this. So that's what they're relying on. And people say, Mary, they're too tall. Cut them back if you'd like in June. Why not deadhead the tops? I don't mind. You're going to have a thicker spread anyway. And then they'll say to me, oh, it spreads. I told you could put those barriers. And with all of these milkweeds, if you don't want them to spread a lot, people put mesh on top of the flower balls. And so when those seeds come out, they've harnessed them. Or you do it because you want the seeds. If you cut back, though, you're basically cutting back food that's for those caterpillars. So I don't do it at all. They flop over, it doesn't matter. I've got a piece of rope I can wrangle them with. And again, here's a little bit later. They're out, those blossoms are out for a very, very long time. But I throw everything together. And I'm not the design person. I know some of you are probably excellent at that. I just like a cacophony of flowers. So my second story about pollinators is a little more down to earth. And that is, we spend a lot of time, how many grow tomatoes? Yeah, see, okay. So I'll hit one good one. So with the tomatoes, we spend all this time and effort on them. And I thought to myself one day, well, what's pollinating those guys? So what I found out is that the tomatoes are flexible. And one of the things that will pollinate them is wind. So of course that kind of indicates to me that the plant is very, very old, older than other plants. But if you want more tomatoes, if you want to get those ribbons at the Barnstable County Fair, you're going to need pollinators. And you're going to need bees. But you're going to need a specific kind of a bee because that bee is going to have to do what they refer to as buzz pollination. Now, buzz pollination is not going to be done by our lovely honeybees. Remember, they're those European immigrants? It's our native bumblebees that are doing the buzz pollination. Remember those big guys that defy aerodynamics? They're the only ones that can do it. And if you look at this picture, you go, well, Mary, that doesn't look like my tomatoes, where I put my tomatoes. You can see a tiny little kind of steel or whatever they call those cages. And that's where my tomato is, and there's already flowers on there. And I like companion planting, and so what I do is I put all this other stuff there. I've got borage there. I have calendula there, and of course, milkweed. So here's the way we have it. Remember, these are our flowers. And people always tell me, I have all these flowers, but I never get tomatoes. What's going on? The common eastern bumblebee is here. The tomato flower has a stalk, and at the tip is the anther. Remember, we talked about the male part of the flower, and that's where the pollen is. In the tomato, the pollen is hidden inside the anther, not outside like most of our flowers. And then they made it even tougher. There are tiny holes there where that pollen comes out, and it's like your salt shaker. It has to come out of those tiny little holes. So the female worker bee here, bumblebee, is holding on to that flower with all her might, and she's vibrating her flight muscles, which also help her fly at lower temperatures, you see. And she uses those muscles to shake out the pollen out of that plant. So the more pollen you get out of that plant, that anther, the better your tomato's going to be. I used to tell people a long time ago, well, if you don't get them, go to your plant and flick it. And that essentially is what people are doing in greenhouses to get our winter tomato plants. And this is my half of a story. On the left is, of course, all of our favorite shrubs that flower, the rhododendron. How many of you have those? Of course, everybody. It's the #1 flowering shrub in the country. They have 10 or more stamen, and more stamen means more pollen. I'm not a brainiac. It's like, this is easy. But have you ever noticed these patterns? They're usually almost always on the top petal, and this is very, very ornate. Most of them are not quite that ornate. We also have them on our digitalis or our foxgloves. And so if you miss the rhododendrons, you can always look at your foxgloves to take a look at this. But this is something unusual, and I always wondered about it. I remember as a kid looking at the azalea flowers and wondering, what's that all about? How does that get there? These are nectar guides. They were first found by scientists in the 1700s. And what these things do is something very interesting. First of all, they help inexperienced pollinators find the pollen. However, more interestingly, is just recently, and it was just last year, scientists actually measured the amount of time it takes for that pollinator to, one, approach the flower, land on the flower, go in and get the nectar, and go to the next flower. And if the nectar guide is there, it's 31% faster, more efficient in that bee doing that movement. So they're able to go to more flowers. So the pollinator is getting more food, and the plant is getting a better chance of pollination. And you might think about who came up with that, the plant or the pollinator, and I'm almost sure it's the plant. And you think about the flexibility of plants and how absolutely marvelous they are. So let's go to native plants, and I know you all are moving in that direction, everybody is. And yet, it's simple that native plants are supporting native insects and wildlife. The plants are keeping the ecosystem balanced. But the huge point, and I was late coming to this, I'm not a smart person. Non-native plants with flowers that have high-quality nectar and protein-rich pollen are great for the adult stages. You know, I can see a whole lot of wonderful butterflies and all sorts of bees coming to my garden no matter what, if we're gardeners and we love flowers. However, non-natives are often useless when it comes to the caterpillar stages, the larval stages, and if there's that relationship like the butterflies with host plants. And we know it's the same with bees as well. There are certain plants they are going to specifically. There are certain native bees that do the pollination of the cranberries every year. That's all very specialized. As a matter of fact, we lost one of them several years ago. The whole entire group of that particular bee disappeared. And they have no idea why that occurred. We had other bees that came in to take their place, but that's kind of how little we know about this stuff. So natives are so important, and it's particularly the vast majority of those native bees, as I said, are going only to specific plants as well. In order to make sure that that the pollinators we need have food for those stages before they're adults, just to give you an idea of another little thing, it takes 6,000 caterpillars to feed a clutch of baby chickadees. So even if you're, you know, just putting in some of these things for birds, for the whole entire wildlife circle of life, it's wonderful. And they're easier. I'm older. I want things that are easy to do. I don't have to fertilize my native plants. I don't have to do a lot of soil prep, frankly. I don't need to water unless they're brand new. And they're adapted to where we live. Even when you guys do your plant sale, you are selling plants that are already adapted here, as opposed to getting it through a mail order catalog where it's coming from New Jersey or somewhere else in the country that isn't like we are. And then here are the best practices that other people do. I don't know your conditions. You have to do that. Some people have clay. Some people have sand. Some people have all sorts of things that are different. I've even had people say, I have a homeowners association. I have no idea what to do with that. Hide them in your backyard. Sometimes people say, please give us a talk on natives in your backyard. And I think that's the pitch there. You know all of your own area, and your neighbors do as well. I will tell you, at this point, I am only adding natives, and in my pots I am now putting almost all just perennials and starting natives too. I say no ides. That's number 2 here. And this is really, really important. Your pesticides, your herbicides, your insecticides, your fungicides, and you know, one of the things was I took to be a professional. It was a free course, to all the stuff on pesticides, and I never felt comfortable giving that advice to anybody. I know there are situations where you need to do that, but for me, if you want this kind of gardening, it really says you can't do it. I also am a believer in integrated pest management, which means that when I am looking at something like last summer, a huge amount of aphids, we all had aphids galore because of all the rain. If you see on your leaves those tiny little white strings with a little dot, those are the lace wings. As soon as those lace wings come out, they'll be eating the aphids. Water also is great for aphids. I have a high threshold. And, you know, maybe you don't, but I do. And then, of course, number 3 is buying plants and seeds. You have to ask, were they treated? People even tell me about buying milkweed and it was treated. And so, you know, it's a sad thing to say, but you can't have it. On the seed yeah.
Would it make sense to try to grow the milkweed from seed? I mean, purchase seed, or should that still be treated?
Yeah, you know, I've never seen milkweed that was in a packet that was treated. There's no point in it, you know. And you're absolutely right. I will tell you, often they will say it's non-GMO, which is the other thing you don't want. You don't want GMO as well. So on your seed packets, you know, I take the old-fashioned route. I get all of them that have all of the things that in the past we had problems with. Some of my flowering shrubs have something that other people don't like, and I have something on that. But, you know, I remember I was helping at the demonstration garden with the vegetable gardener, and they said to me, you have to wear gloves with those seeds, and they're in a foil packet inside. And they were all GMO treated. That's why you had to put gloves on. So, you know, it's just thinking about that. Heirloom seeds are really good. Herbs. I love herbs, and the herbs are great for pollinators, and particularly you're going to see your tiny native bees come to them. And then here, some of the vegetables, if I put kale in, I always let it flower, because you're going to see those pollinators on that as well. Grow some more and let some of them flower and some of them not. On your lawn, clover, we're getting good at this. We're allowing that clover to grow. And then the violets, some people are doing that as a lawn alternative. I think that's wonderful. I have bunnies chewing on my violets right now. And dandelions, the same thing. I'm a little bit funny about dandelions. I'm not thrilled with them. I don't think they're that great for pollinators, frankly. Yeah?
I have a plant that has a lot of little lawn leaves on it. It grows all through the lawn, and it has like tall stems with little tiny dandelion-looking things on top of it. And I leave that there, and it's spread all over the place.
I think it's wonderful. Why not?
I don't leave the big dandelions, or I didn't used to, but now I'm wondering if I should either leave them or eat them.
Doesn't matter. Some people are making wine out of them.
Wine, yeah.
And, you know, we're at the ocean, and we don't always think about the water, but all of our bees and our butterflies, they need water too. And if you have a bird bath, I found this in some magazine, I'm putting those wine corks in there so they have a place to land, because when it gets really, really hot and really, really dry and we haven't had any rain, that seemed to do it. They have a little place to land and kind of sit there for a while. And in the fall, we're now knowing about being lazy. And I know this is really, really hard because it goes against everything we ever taught to be gardeners. But what I have done is less and less for a fall cleanup. Right. And I am waiting, actually, I hate to tell you, people say, well, what is the magic day? I think May is a good time, but I also think that last year I even waited till June. I don't do anything all at once anymore. I'm too old. And then the leaf thing, we're saying leave the leaves. And of course you don't want them up to here. But the leaves are real important because not only are they great as a mulch, and chipping them is not the answer if you're really looking for a mulch. It's leaving them as they are intact. But you know, a lot of those native bees are going underground for the winter, and it's only a few inches down. So that gives them a little protection if it gets really cold like it did this winter time. I don't know, it's nice to be lazy. I'm enjoying it more and more. Now we get to look at pictures of wonderful things, which is what everybody always likes. Early spring is so, so important. And the reason it's important is, remember those bumblebees? That queen is the only one left at the end of the fall. And so she's been down underground. She's coming out. She's coming out at lower temperatures than any of our other bees are. And she's looking for a lot of stuff for her colonies. She's building the colony. And so when she comes out, what does she get? And here we seem to have a late time period when our trees are starting to come out, I mean in spring. You know how people always say we don't get a spring? So you're looking for things that are out early. When I was getting ready to come over here, the witch hazel is already blooming. And I looked at it, and there are a bunch of small little native bees all over it. So, because there's not much out there right now. There are some things, Lenten roses, your hellebores are probably out. I unfortunately have sun and not shade anymore, but I adore hellebores. But this one worked for me. It's not native to here, but it's native to some other part of the U.S. And I got it because it was at the end of the year, and I was starting my garden here, and nothing else was around, so I got it at that sale table. I love it. It's got an open, but when you start looking at pollinators, you're starting to look at the structure of the flower. Who's going to be visiting this flower? This could be visited by a lot of different pollinators. And sandy soil's okay, and a lot of you have it. Again, not native, but I'll tell you this, false forget-me-not, it's on everybody's list for early butterflies, some of our butterflies are actually almost coming out. You can get those swallowtails out now, because they'll overwinter. And I still think this is a great pollinator for the beginning. This is what I refer to as a gangbuster plant. It's a native. It's a ground cover, and it works for everybody. So you're hitting all of your little perfect things that you have to have in the pollinator world. And very early spring, we're hitting that. By the way, the hummingbirds come back here. The size and weight of them is reduced by 1/3 of that migration that they have to do. And they are just dying, and I don't mean the word dying. They're just looking so vigorously for that energy they need to get their weight back. This is absolutely one of my favorites of all time, but my list is huge. So your Virginia bluebells, does anybody grow this? Oh, don't you love them?
My Virginia yard.
Yes. Yes, everybody visits them. It's a native to Massachusetts. So it's a spring ephemeral. Do you love it?
I just started them in the winter in jugs. I have a whole started. I have the whole spot picked out.
Oh. And sometimes people say, well, they're not going to grow of course, try them. It's a spring ephemeral. So not only is it native, not only is it a great pollinator plant, but look, it's a spring ephemeral. It's going to come up, it's going to be beautiful, and then it's going to die. All the green above the ground is going to die. It'll come back next year, but to me, I'm like one of those, I'll throw everything in there. That means I've got space still for more. And who doesn't want more? This is kind of an odd one, and I like it because it's a herb perennial. I will tell you, it goes back to Northumberland to the 1633 time period. So it's a very, very old plant. Somebody gave it to me. I love it because it's up now. It hasn't bloomed, but it will very quickly. It's a bit aggressive. I like the word aggressive because it gives me some latitude. And I put it in different places. So in different places, it's blooming at different times. I put everything in different places for that same reason. I will put them all over in some shade, some sun, some bright sun, all the rest of it. This one, a gangbuster. How many of you have the wild blue indigo? Ah, my heart be still. It is perfect. It's a legume, so it's in the bean family. So what does that mean? It means that it is giving back to the soil just because it exists there. Rabbits will not touch it. We're always looking for non-rabbit plants. And this was used in place of indigo by some of the early colonial people. It tolerates, look what it tolerates. This is the kind of thing I look for. Drought, salt, poor soil, and erosion. I mean, come on! It's like begging for you to put it in. It comes in a pink, it comes in a white. I think it doesn't matter. I have a couple of them. Sometimes you'll find one will do better than the other, different species or whatever. Deer eat it. Well, there you go. That's a negative.
Yeah. Unless you like deer.
Yeah. So here we have rosemary, and this is bumble and honeybee. Love this to death. And I took this picture, and alas, as I mentioned, this is a rusty patched bumblebee, and they're endangered. They're this shy of being, eradicated. But I put it in, and I'm always like, oh, but I want it for the rice dish. And then I'll say, oh, but leave it for the bee. So it's like, should it flower or not? I actually use all the flowers the same as in all my herb things. They're just as good as the herbs. Here's my bee balm, lots of different bee balms. We saw the Jacob, whatever his name is first, and the red one. And then this is the wild bergamot. This is the one that's anything in the mint family, and I don't mean mint, I mean in the mint family, is going to do wonders, and they're almost all native types. Everything, I showed you this, and this is why I always say, I can live with the powdery mildew. I'm okay with that. I take off the leaves. It's all right. I'd rather have a native plant than have the one that doesn't get it. There are other things people say will work on it, but I don't go that far. How many had this one? Yeah, it's a great plant. Again, it's a late summer and autumn, in that time period that we have some issues getting enough. This happens to be a silver-spotted skipper, and it's nectaring. And you can have this too. Do you guys get one of those? You have to spend time looking. You really do. And sometimes we're so invested in working that we don't spend the time. Lavender, this is huge for bees. And it works so well in our environment here on the Cape. Woody perennial. I kill a few of these over the years, and I keep going back to how you prune them. And some people tell you to prune them severely, and I don't think that's what you do. You just do a little bit on the edges. And potpourris and everything else, but it's a great pollinator plant. Then we go to great blue lobelia. Lobelia cardinalis is wonderful as well. The thing about this is they're really flowering late in the summer. So it's at a critical time in our pollinator time period. And here's a lovely obedient plant. The one that isn't obedient. Why do we call it obedient? I couldn't figure it out, and I kept saying, why is this an obedient plant? It is not being obedient. And then it comes to find out that the reason it's obedient is because if you take one of those little flowers and push it up, it will stay. One of the tubular flowers. But it's easy to grow. I think somebody gave it to me. I'm not against annuals for pollinators. We had that discussion early on. It will be great to attract them, and why not? They're lovely. I will tell you, here's a morning glory, so even some of your vines are great. This one has a native bee on it. This is a bicolored striped sweat bee. The sweat bee is because people always thought it was coming after salt. They don't hurt either. People keep thinking all these bees are going to sting you. They don't. I mean, people pick them up and they mess around and then put them back down like they're toys. Zinnias, and there's so many to choose from. These are magnets. They keep blooming. They go through the fall blooming. The one advice I will give you is to go for the single blooms, not those real lovely huge ones, because those pollinators can't get in there. So when you go to look at your plants, you're buying your plants for next year, or looking at the magazines, you're looking for these kinds of things. You know, it's a balancing act. So I'm going to not have as many showy plants, but I'm going to do something for pollinators. People tell me State Fair variety is a lovely one. And I finally got around. I told you I'm a little slow. My father said that. And I finally tried this annual. And this is the Mexican sunflower. There are two types. And the one I tried last summer was the Tithonia. And here I'm going to tell you it is a rotatifolia. It's a magnet. And it's late in the season that this is happening. What is so cool about this is they fight over a spot on this plant. I picked all the leaves, the seeds from it, and I'm going to see if I can't have them next year. It's a tropical, obviously, with Mexican in the name, but it is absolutely incredible as a pollinator plant. It is not native, but in some cases, in my book, it's okay. Somebody mentioned black-eyed Susan. Again, it's a native, easy to grow from seed, and late summer when we need it. Sunflowers, again, late summer. Some people don't like them, they're too big. And so this is a very short variety. I grow them in pots. They're okay. And why not? It's gorgeous. And look at that monarch, loved it. I remember somebody in this group talked about goldenrod and using it in these lovely items. There is a gentleman in Sandwich, and I think he has a list that is close to 100 different types that he's growing over in his area. I haven't gotten over there to look, but once I did get his list, I started looking, and I was absolutely blown away at how many different types there are. I just picked up a few seeds from the beach area and took them home and threw them in the ground, and that's kind of how I do things. I don't mind. I put them in between the shrubs. If they come up, they come up. If they don't, they don't. But I'm here to tell you, it is just an absolutely lovely thing. They're native, and it's a gangbuster plant. This particular butterfly is a small copper butterfly, and the white things that are there, of course, are the milkweed seeds being blown around so you can see the time of the year. People then will tell me, well, aren't those people always have allergies towards that plant? That's ragweed. Ragweed is the one, and surprisingly enough, last year some bird brought one in for me, and it was a giant ragweed, and so I got rid of him. But I don't want to be sneezing too much. This is the one to get, and there are just so many different pollinators. It's a good pollen source. I saw a number of years ago, I'm near Surf Drive Beach in Falmouth. I went down there in the fall, and I saw this huge amount of monarch butterflies at the beach. And I thought, what in the world's going on here? Why are all these monarchs? They're the ones that are migrating. They're coming in from Canada. They're sweeping down, and they need to get that energy to go back up again and do more migration. And so I was just amazed, but this is what was helping them so very much in getting that source of energy. Yeah.
Have you heard about putting out like mud for butterflies, like a little mud puddle, or so they get the minerals out of it?
Yes, you can do that. There's a number of things. The mud puddle thing with some rocks on it, I think people generally do. That's fine. I don't do it just because I don't. I also think that they can get some of those minerals off the stems and off of the leaves of plants. In the soil even, you'll see them puddling if it's rained and they've been down there. That's the term they use. Everybody has a vocabulary. But yeah, so I kind of feel like there are other places they can go. I do see them in the puddles. I don't have a problem with it. Sometimes, you know, there are only so many hours in a day, so that's the only reason. And here are the asters. Don't we just love them? And of course, this one's doing the nectaring. It's what type is it? Male or female? Yeah, see? I love asters. I think they're amazing. Absolutely filled. And I always say mix it up. Succession flowering is so important to cover all of that. The spring, we do great in the summer, but the fall, we break down on those two ends. For the monarchs, we get them, meaning the migrating generation is happening here, mid-August to late August, September, October, and even a little bit into November, depending on the year it is. That's how late. And think about what we have going on in the gardens. It's not the same at that point in time. And here's the different shapes, different flowers. This is August. Montauk daisies are there for a little later, hydrangeas. I throw in native hibiscus in between them. You know, why not? And this is a shrub that I can't help but recommend. It is not a native. It does have wonderful ties to the state of Massachusetts. Seven Suns flower, Heptacodium, myconoides, for the Latin lovers. I hope I didn't destroy that. This is chock full of pollinators at a time that it's late in the season and there isn't much else out. And literally, it will be buzzing. And once again, you almost have to duck if you want to walk by it. I kid you not. It suits New England. Originally, it came to my attention as a replacement for crepe myrtle. It has exfoliating bark. It's like that all season, something's happening. And just to show you, here are about, and I counted them, 30 bees sitting on the side of the house. They're waiting for the warm-up so they can get going and get onto that plant, a shrub. They grow well. They can be grown actually as a tree. Do you ever go to Soar's garden? Okay, she has one as a tree, I'm pretty sure. If your entrance is here, it's off to the left. I think hers is 10 years old.
So you can grow it like a tree and it needs lots of sun.
It doesn't. It doesn't. I have it in a shade where there's a wood fence and it does fine. I'm telling you, it is just an amazing. And then I've probably transplanted small ones out of the gardens, maybe 7 or 8 of them, and put them other places, and they did equally as well. Some in full sun, some not. Soil doesn't matter, nothing matters. I'm a lazy gardener. And then just to finish up, you know, we had that polar vortex. So my husband loves roses, and so we put in roses. I'm not a rosarian. It's too much effort for me. I love them. They're a lot of effort. So that happened, the vortex happened, and the next year, there you have, I threw the dahlias in. Somebody gave me dahlias, I threw them in, I do every year. And then that's a bone set, and I don't remember planting that. I don't know, maybe I did. I do a lot of weird stuff. And the bone set is a fabulous plant, and it has a wonderful, it's native, and crane's bill geraniums are in there, and that's a good thing too. But just the idea of it, you've got to be flexible in this. You know, a lot of people don't know a lot of things about a lot of things, but they think they do. So somebody wanted me to plant garden, a pollinator garden in a very large space. This is in sun, and it's amazing what happens. But if you're lucky enough to have full sun, a lot of area, this is only perennials, and it's succession flowering stuff. Joe pieweed, nepeta, coneflowers, common rue. Common rue is one herb. Sedum, autumn joy, St. John wort, it goes on and on. Leotris, blazing star, coreopsis, nepetas. You know, you can do this if you have a lot of space. I already had a yard, so I'm putting things in between stuff. I'm not a terror outer. And I don't think I have talked much about herbs. But for example, if you want swallowtails, you're looking for parsley, fennel, rue, common rue, which can become a shrub. It can be that big. And things like that, dill. Yeah. And you'd be amazed. Like I had a common rue, and I had it in back, and I never really paid attention to it. And then all of a sudden, I saw these guys walking across the steppe, and lo and behold, they were the caterpillars. And so they ended up, three of them ended up doing that incredible thing that they do on a twig. It's the most amazing when they go into chrysalis. It's not chrysalis, it's the other word for it. But it's the most amazing thing you've ever seen in your life. And some of them, I'm going to tell you here and now, they're finicky little devils. Because one of them came out immediately, another one came out about a week or two later, and another one didn't come out until spring the next year. So that's the way the swallowtails are. But those are some of the ones for butterflies in particular. All of your native bees, those tiny ones, are the ones that are wanting tiny flowers. And then this is the way I look at it. Pursuit of the perfect becomes the enemy of something good. Sometimes we wait years to do something because we have that barrier. For me, it was tree peonies. I waited probably 15 years to plant one because I looked at all of that stuff that said how to prepare the soil and how to do this and how to do that. And you know, it isn't that hard. It's like orchids. Orchids are easy. It's the same thing, but it's that barrier that sometimes we have. Lots of non-natives do wonderful things for bees. We've talked about that. And straight species, and this was a study done at Penn State, sometimes they're not always the pollinator favorites. And you know, that's partially because we haven't done that much in the way of experiments about the non-natives. So who knows? And I can tell you, with my experience with monarchs, the most studied butterfly we have. And there's so much they don't know. And you know, and every year more information will come out because we have some wonderful, incredible young people studying them, and we have so much more in the way we can look at things at the molecular level and all of this RNA and DNA. I thank you very much. That is it.